That morning felt like one of those rare golden weekends when everything just fits. The sunlight peeked through the curtains, the smell of coffee filled the house, and I could hear the faint hum of birds outside. Mark was already up, dressed, jingling his car keys with that easy smile that still melted me after all these years. The steaks were marinating, the playlist was ready, and I kept thinking, finally, a quiet, perfect holiday. No work, no rush, no drama, just us, home, and peace. I remember squinting at him from the bed, half asleep but smiling. "Don't take too long, the steaks are marinating," I teased. He leaned in, kissed my forehead, and said, "Won't be long, babe, just helping Tom with some car trouble." Typical Mark, always the helpful one. I laughed softly. "You and your good deeds. Go play mechanic." He grinned, grabbed his wallet, and the front door clicked behind him. For a second, the silence that followed felt comforting. I got up, still humming the tune from last night's movie, tied my robe, and headed to the kitchen. The sunlight hit the counter just right, making everything glow. I brewed more coffee, sliced some fruit, and even texted my mom about lunch plans for the next day. Everything felt easy, familiar, safe. If someone had told me that by noon, my entire world would tilt off its axis, I would have laughed. Because in that moment, life felt perfect. After Mark left, I turned on some soft music, the kind you hum along to without realizing, and started prepping lunch. The sizzle of olive oil in the pan, the smell of garlic, the sunlight spilling across the tiles. It all felt like a little movie moment. I even caught myself smiling for no reason. Maybe it was relief. We'd both been so busy lately, him at work, me juggling a dozen things, that having a few days to just be felt like a gift. I was ready for laughter, grilled steak, and maybe even a nap under the backyard tree. I checked my phone a few times, expecting him to text that he'd fixed Tom's car or was on his way back. Nothing. I didn't think much of it at first. Mark was always easily distracted, especially when a friend needed him. Still, something about the stillness started to feel heavier. Maybe it was the way time stretched. 2 hours became 3, and the sunlight had already shifted by the time I realized how long he'd been gone. I kept telling myself, don't be paranoid. He's just running late. To distract myself, I poured a glass of lemonade and stepped outside. The air was warm, fragrant with the smell of cut grass from the neighbor's yard. I closed my eyes, letting the breeze brush against my face, and thought about how small moments like these were what made love last. Trust, patience, the quiet kind of loyalty. I had no reason to doubt him. None at all. But that's the thing about peace, isn't it? It never warns you when it's about to end. Back inside, I set the table, lit a few candles, because why not make lunch feel special? And checked the clock again. Nearly noon. I sent him a quick text. "Everything okay?" No response. That familiar mix of concern and irritation started bubbling up, the kind you get when someone you love forgets that you're waiting. I tried to shake it off. Maybe he'd stopped for gas. Maybe Tom's car was a disaster. I wanted to believe every logical excuse because believing otherwise felt too heavy. So I went back to humming. I sliced the vegetables, stirred the sauce, and turned on the fan when the kitchen got too warm. It was almost peaceful again, until my phone buzzed on the counter. I smiled instantly, assuming it was Mark finally checking in. Without even drying my hands, I reached for it, ready to tease him for taking so long. But the name on the screen wasn't his. It was an unknown number, and that tiny, stupid detail, the one I almost ignored, changed everything. I hesitated for a second, thumb hovering over the screen. Maybe it's Mom, I thought. Or a friend. Maybe. But curiosity won. I swiped it open, expecting something ordinary, something forgettable. Instead, I read a message that made my stomach twist so hard I almost dropped the phone. "Thank you for lending him to me today. I promise to return him in one piece." I just stood there, heart pounding, breath frozen, realizing my perfect weekend had just ended before it even began. I must have read that message 5 times, each word burning a little deeper than the last. At first, I laughed, a nervous, shaky laugh that didn't sound like mine. It has to be a joke, I thought. Maybe someone typed the wrong number. But the winking emoji at the end, that's what got me. It wasn't random. It felt deliberate, taunting, even. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, trembling slightly. My heart was thudding so loudly I could hear it echo in my ears. "Who is this?" I typed, trying to keep it calm, trying to sound like a woman who wasn't suddenly drowning in dread. The seconds stretched painfully long before my phone lit up again. "You know who I am, or at least, you should." That was it. No name, no explanation, just that smug, poisonous line. My mouth went dry. I could feel something inside me snapping, slowly, like glass under pressure. Every calm thought I'd had that morning dissolved into a sickening wave of suspicion. I searched the number online, hands trembling so hard I almost dropped the phone. The name popped up instantly, as if the universe wanted to confirm my worst fear. Melissa Carter, Mark's coworker. The one he said was just a friend, the one he mentioned too casually, too often. My stomach turned cold. I could still hear his voice in my head. "She's like one of the guys, Sam. Don't be jealous." But standing there, phone in hand, I finally understood what my gut had been whispering all along. I stood there in my kitchen, surrounded by the smell of grilled meat and rosemary, yet everything suddenly felt rotten. My hands were slick with sweat, my throat tight. It's strange how quickly the air can change when betrayal slips into the room. Just minutes earlier, I was humming, happy. Now, every little sound felt like a threat. The ticking clock, the boiling water, the soft buzz of my phone still clutched in my palm. I didn't want to believe it, but denial doesn't protect you. It only delays the fall. I scrolled through our old photos, looking for clues I might have missed. There she was, Melissa, smiling in group shots, standing a little too close, her hand brushing his arm in one picture. How had I ignored that? How had I convinced myself it was harmless? My mind replayed every late meeting, every just one more email, every time Mark showered right after getting home. It was all there, lined up neatly like puzzle pieces I'd refused to see before. And now, the picture was unmistakable. I wanted to scream, to call him, to demand the truth right then. But something in me stopped. Maybe pride, maybe shock. Instead, I just stood there, staring at her name on my screen, that tiny green dot next to it, online now. She was there, somewhere, smiling, knowing exactly what she'd done. My knees nearly gave out, and I gripped the counter to steady myself. That message wasn't an accident. It was a declaration, and I wasn't going to let it end there. I sat down at the kitchen table, the same one where we'd shared countless breakfasts and quiet talks about nothing. It suddenly felt foreign, like I was intruding in someone else's home. My phone sat in front of me, screen dimmed, but that message burned in my mind like it was carved there. I replayed the tone of it, the smirk I could almost hear behind the words. I wasn't just hurt, I was humiliated. She wanted me to know. She wanted to twist the knife before I even knew where it was coming from. For a moment, I thought about calling my mom. She'd tell me to breathe, to wait, to think. But I didn't want comfort. I wanted clarity. I wanted to understand how long this lie had been sitting in my home, drinking my coffee, kissing me goodnight. I went through his messages, his calendar, even the photos he'd deleted but hadn't emptied from his trash folder. Every click hurt a little more, but pain, I realized, was also fuel, and I was starting to feel it burn hot. By the time I heard his car in the driveway, I had already made a choice. I wasn't going to cry or beg or let him talk circles around me. I was going to watch him, closely, quietly, and see if he'd dare lie to my face. The sound of his key turning in the door felt different now, sharper, almost mocking. My hands trembled, but my heart had gone strangely calm. Whatever truth walked in with him, I was ready to face it. When Mark walked through the door, he looked exactly the same as he always did. Carefree, charming, completely unaware that his world was about to tilt. Sorry, traffic was insane, he said, setting down a few grocery bags. Tom's car was a mess. His tone was so casual, so familiar, that for a fleeting second I almost believed him. Almost. But once you've seen the truth, you can't unsee it. I could feel my body stiffen as I watched him, like my heart was holding its breath. I folded my arms and asked, Tom's car? Or Melissa's? The way his smile froze was all the answer I needed. His eyes flicked to me, searching my face for clues, calculating. What? Who? He asked, voice cracking halfway through the word. I picked up my phone, turned the screen toward him. She texted me, Mark. Melissa. She thanked me for lending you to her. The color drained from his face so fast it almost made me pity him. Almost. That's not what it sounds like, Sam, he stammered. She's just joking around. I tilted my head, pretending to consider it. A joke? I said quietly. Then why are you turning white? He tried to speak, but every excuse tangled on his tongue. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just watched him, the man I thought I knew, unravel one nervous breath at a time. And in that silence, something inside me broke, but not in the way he expected. I wasn't falling apart. I was waking up. He started pacing, rubbing the back of his neck like he always did when cornered. Sam, you're blowing this out of proportion, he said, forcing a laugh that didn't sound real. She's just a friend. You know how she jokes. I watched him scramble, tripping over his own lies like loose stones. It was almost fascinating, how someone could look you in the eye and still try to rewrite reality. I could have screamed, demanded every detail, but I didn't. I wanted to see how far he'd go to defend the indefensible. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed, voice steady. You know, I used to think trust was built over time, I said softly. Turns out it only takes one message to destroy it. He stopped, eyes wide, mouth open as if he wanted to speak, but couldn't find the right lie fast enough. The silence between us grew heavy, stretching like a rope about to snap. He reached for my hand, but I pulled away. Even that small gesture felt foreign now, like being touched by a stranger wearing his face. When he finally muttered, "It was a mistake," I almost laughed. Not out of humor, but disbelief. A mistake. That word was too small, too polite for what he'd done. A mistake is forgetting milk, not dismantling someone's trust piece by piece. I looked at him, really looked, and realized something that both hurt and liberated me. I didn't recognize the man standing in front of me anymore. The Mark I loved wasn't gone. He never existed. That night, I didn't shout, didn't throw anything, didn't even cry. I just lay in bed beside him, staring at the ceiling while he pretended to sleep. The distance between us felt like miles, though our shoulders nearly touched. Every shallow breath he took reminded me of how close lies can live, right next to you, wrapped in the same blanket. I watched the faint light from the street slip through the blinds and thought, how long has this been my life without me noticing? He mumbled something about fixing things, but his words blurred into the hum of the night. I turned away, eyes open, mind racing. I thought about every favor, every late meeting, every time I defended him to my friends. All those tiny moments, and this is where they led, to the quiet betrayal beneath my own roof. My stomach ached, but it wasn't from heartbreak anymore. It was from something sharper, colder, clarity. By morning, I already knew what I had to do. I made breakfast like nothing had happened, poured his coffee, smiled when he kissed my cheek on his way out. But inside, I was done being fooled. I wasn't going to confront him again. Not yet. No, this time I'd move quietly, carefully. If he thought he'd played me, he was about to learn who I really was. Sometimes revenge doesn't come in anger. It comes in silence. And mine had just begun. In the days that followed, I became someone else. Quieter, steadier, watchful. Mark thought the storm had passed, that my silence meant forgiveness, but forgiveness was never part of the plan. I smiled when he talked about work, nodded when he mentioned Tom, and pretended to believe every recycled lie that left his lips. What he didn't know was that I'd started keeping notes. Mental first, then written. Times, places, odd receipts left in his jacket pockets. Every small truth he thought I'd overlook, I collected like evidence. It's strange how easily a person can live two lives once they've been betrayed. By day, I was the same Samantha, cooking, laughing at dinner, asking how his day went. But inside, something was shifting. The ache had turned into focus. I learned to listen differently, not to his words, but to the cracks between them. That's where the truth hides, in pauses, in sudden hesitations. And Mark had plenty of those. At night, while he scrolled through his phone, I'd sit beside him with my laptop open, pretending to browse recipes. Instead, I was tracing his lies, car routes on the GPS, hotel charges on our credit card statement, dinners that had never included me. Every new discovery stung less than the one before. Pain has a way of dulling when replaced by purpose, and mine had never been clearer. If he wanted to play games, I'd finish them on my terms. I started printing things, receipts, screenshots, GPS routes, even a hotel confirmation he'd carelessly deleted. I slipped them into a neat folder and labeled it Truth. It felt almost poetic. Every page was a piece of my heartbreak turned into proof. Every lie turned into paper. There was something empowering about it, almost calming, like reclaiming control one page at a time. I wasn't guessing anymore. I knew. And knowledge, I realized, is the first step to freedom. When I told my friend Claire, she nearly dropped her coffee. "You're really going to do this?" she asked, half in awe, half in fear. I smiled, that cold, steady kind of smile that only comes from certainty. "He humiliated me on a holiday," I said quietly. "I'll make sure he never celebrates another one peacefully again." Claire didn't try to stop me. She just nodded, eyes wide, and said, "Then make it count." And I intended to, so I waited. I watched him plan our next holiday barbecue, bragging to our friends about how lucky he was, how solid we were as a couple. The irony was delicious. I cooked, cleaned, smiled, played the perfect wife while he set the stage for his own undoing. My silence wasn't submission anymore. It was strategy. Every word he spoke was a line in the play I was about to end with the truth. The day of the barbecue arrived warm and bright, the kind of weather that almost dares you to feel happy. Our friends filled the backyard, laughter spilling like champagne, and Mark was in his element, charming, loud, completely oblivious. He clinked glasses, grilled burgers, and kissed my cheek as if nothing in our world had cracked. Watching him felt surreal, like I was observing a performance I'd already read the ending to. I smiled when people said, "You two are perfect together." Oh, if only they knew. When the moment felt right, I stood up, glass of wine in hand. I said, smiling sweetly. "It's funny. Mark spent our last holiday helping a friend. Or so I thought." The chatter quieted, laughter faded. Mark froze mid-bite. I reached into my bag and placed the folder, my little masterpiece of truth, right in the center of the table. The air shifted instantly. Even the birds seemed to stop singing. "Turns out," I continued, my voice steady, "the only car he fixed that day was Melissa's, at a hotel, with champagne." For a few seconds, no one moved. Then came the whispers, small gasps, eyes darting between us. Mark's face turned the color of paper. "Sam, please," he started, but I raised my hand. "Don't," I said softly. I didn't need to yell. The silence was louder than any scream could be. I picked up my glass, took a slow sip, and smiled politely. "Enjoy the food, everyone. It's the last meal my husband will ever cook for me." And with that, I turned, leaving him sitting in the ruins of his own lies. You could have heard a pin drop as I walked away from that table. Every pair of eyes followed me, but I didn't care. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt light. Behind me, Mark's voice cracked, half pleading, half panicked, but I kept going. The woman who'd once waited for his texts, for his explanations, for his affection, was gone. What replaced her was someone quieter, stronger, made of fire and calm all at once. The kind of woman no one betrays twice. He followed me toward the gate, stammering, "Sam, please, don't do this here." I turned, finally meeting his eyes. "Why not?" I asked softly. "You never minded doing it in public." The words hit him harder than I expected. His jaw clenched, and I could see the moment he realized there was nothing left to save. Around us, our friends stood frozen, witnesses not just to his shame, but to my liberation. Funny, isn't it? The same crowd he'd used to feed his ego now watched it crumble. I reached into my purse and pulled out the divorce papers, crisp and final. "You used me," I said quietly, handing them to him. "You lied to me, made me a fool in front of everyone. Now it's your turn." His hands shook as he took them, eyes darting around, searching for some corner of the world that hadn't turned against him yet. But there wasn't one. He'd built this stage himself, and I'd simply given the audience the truth they deserved. I walked past him, my heels clicking against the pavement like punctuation marks to the end of our story. Behind me, his voice cracked again, softer this time. "Sam, wait." There was a time when that tone would have broken me, made me turn back, made me forgive, but not anymore. I didn't even glance over my shoulder. He'd had his chances, every lie, every weekend away, every moment he thought I wouldn't find out. My silence wasn't cruelty. It was closure. As I reached my car, I saw my reflection in the window, calm, collected, unrecognizable from the woman who'd once doubted her worth. It hit me then that revenge isn't about shouting or breaking things. It's about standing tall when someone expected you to crumble. I slid into the driver's seat, started the engine, and felt an unfamiliar peace settle in. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't afraid of what came next. I was in control. When I drove away, I caught a glimpse of him in the rearview mirror, standing there, small, surrounded by the wreckage of his own making. People avoided his eyes, whispered among themselves, already rewriting how they saw him. And maybe that's the truest punishment of all. Not losing me, but losing the image he'd worked so hard to build. I didn't smile, not yet. Some victories don't need applause, they just need silence. By the time I got home, the adrenaline had worn off, leaving behind a calm so deep it almost scared me. I walked through each room, the kitchen where I'd read that message, the living room where we'd laughed, the bedroom where silence had replaced love. None of it felt painful anymore. It just felt empty, like a chapter I'd finally finished reading. I packed a small suitcase that night, a few clothes, my laptop, and the folder labeled Truth. I didn't need much else. Everything I truly needed was already inside me again. The next morning, I called my lawyer, then my mother, then Claire. Each call was easier than the last. The world didn't collapse like I once feared it would. It kept spinning, softer somehow, as if rewarding me for letting go. When Mark tried calling, I didn't answer. I didn't block him either. His words couldn't touch me anymore. Power isn't about revenge alone. It's about peace that no one can disturb once you've reclaimed it. Later that week, I signed the papers with a steady hand and left the courthouse without looking back. The sun was warm, the sky impossibly clear, and for the first time in years, I wasn't living in reaction to someone else's lies. I was living for myself. And as I crossed the street, I realized that sometimes the most satisfying revenge isn't making someone pay. It's showing them you've already moved on. Months later, I found myself standing on a balcony overlooking the ocean, a soft breeze brushing against my skin. The waves below moved in rhythm, steady and unbothered. Like life, I guess. Claire was inside, laughing with a couple of friends as music played faintly from a speaker. It was a long weekend again, the kind that used to mean chaos and pretending. But now it meant peace. It meant choice. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free enough to breathe without remembering pain. We'd rented a small beach cottage, nothing fancy, but it was perfect. Salt in the air, bare feet on cool sand, no one asking for anything except another drink or a refill of sunscreen. Claire handed me a glass of something sweet and cold. "Remember that text?" she asked with a smirk. I laughed, a real laugh, the kind that came from somewhere unbroken. Oh, I remember, I said, taking a sip. Best message I ever got. It set me free. The sun was beginning to sink, painting the water in gold and amber. My phone buzzed on the railing. One unread message. For a second, curiosity got the best of me, and I glanced at the screen. Mark. Just 2 words. I miss you. I stared at them for a heartbeat, then pressed delete. No anger, no sadness, just release. I turned back toward the ocean, feeling the sand shift under my feet, and smiled. Some waves wash away everything that no longer belongs. As twilight deepened, I walked down toward the shoreline, the waves whispering like old friends. Each step left a footprint that the tide quickly erased, as if the ocean itself was helping me start over. The cool water lapped at my ankles, gentle but insistent, pulling away the last traces of who I used to be. For so long, I'd been defined by his lies, his choices, his shadow. But standing there, with the horizon wide open before me, I realized I was finally living in my own light. Claire called from the porch, her laughter mixing with the sound of the sea. I turned back and waved, the breeze catching my hair, my heart steady. I didn't need revenge anymore. I'd already won. Not by destroying him, but by reclaiming the pieces of myself he'd made me forget. Freedom doesn't come in explosions. It comes in moments like this, quiet, clean, unannounced. Just peace. I stayed there until the last line of sun disappeared beneath the water. The air cooled and the stars began to appear, one by one, like witnesses to a promise kept. Tomorrow, I'd wake up to a new day, a new rhythm, a new version of me. No anger, no ache, just space, wide and endless, like the ocean that stretched before me. And as the waves rolled in again, erasing my footprints for good, I smiled. The past was gone, and so was he.